course, worked in my congressional office and then in our campaigns, and he's followed up with organizing YAL. So, first of all, I think you want to give Jeff an applause for all his hard work. When I was in college, there was a organization called Young Americans for Freedom, which was not the same type of organization. It was appealing to young people, and they joined, but they did not have the libertarian freedom philosophy input that YAL has. But right now, YAL is much bigger, much more influential than Young Americans for Freedom ever was in this 20th century. I'm going to do all I can to encourage YAL. So I appreciate very much all of you being involved, and as some of you come to find out more about it, I hope you get more interested in it. But I want to start off, even though most of you know the general philosophy, it never hurts, because I keep going over general philosophy all the time, the philosophy of liberty. And this to me is the most important, and because one thing for sure, everybody in politics, Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians, Conservatives, for all our history, always talked about freedom and liberty. But the truth is everybody's definition seems to vary a little bit. And I think what the country is starved for, especially the younger generation, is a precise understanding about liberty and what it's all about and why it is so important. Not only understand it, but feel confident enough about it that you have the energy to go out and work and promote the cause of it. And this promotion of liberties can be done in many, many ways. Of course, it can be done in a political sense, in an educational sense, it can be done as a journalist, or whatever. But I happen to be very much involved in the political process, and it was my vehicle, of course, spreading a very important message. So I wouldn't imagine that there will be very many in the audience today who just have decided that liberty was not an issue, and we don't need that, we need more government. There's still a lot of people in this country, and most of them are in Washington, D.C., that think that we need more government. But let me simplify things very easily. Because of liberty cannot be improved upon with a bigger government. Our argument is we need less government, more precisely, to defend liberty, not for governments to come in and run our lives and run the economy and run the world. It's not a whole lot more complicated than that, but it is that philosophy is based on a basic principle. So if you ever get into a debate, which I'm sure you do all the time with those who disagree with ask them, what moral principle does their philosophy depend on? I mean, what moral principle would, say, a liberal Democrat, what is their moral principle? Well, we can come up with our definition of what we think their moral principle is, and it usually ends up use of government. But the libertarian freedom movement endorses the principle of non-aggression. And that is not a strange principle. It's been done for a long time, and it's not only historic in development of individual liberty, but also biblical in many senses. And that is, you can't hurt other people. You can't steal from other people, and you can't lie to other people. And if you can't hurt and steal from people, the basic theme of this is that you don't commit aggression. But there's a big difference, because a lot of people would agree with that. Liberals and conservatives say, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't steal, we should rob it, we should, live up to our promises. But guess where they fail? But their conclusion is yes, the economy is unfair, the free market is unfair to some people, we have to rectify that. If individuals have too much freedom, that might make a mistake. And if other countries get involved in fights, and one group is pressing the other group, it's our obligation to get involved. Well, it's one thing to believe that individuals shouldn't be initiating force, but the libertarian principle is that we don't want the government to initiate force either. If you and I can't do it, we should never permit the government to do it. So if we can't steal, the government should never be allowed to steal either. Rather amazing. This is so perfect today because you turn on the evening news and all you hear about is he's lying, the Republicans are lying, the Democrats are lying. But basically, if we as citizens would lie to our government, which is not advising, but we're in big trouble. We go to prison. But the government's lying to us, nothing happens to us. And if we have individuals who believe that the higher law, the moral law, and the constitutional law is higher than some of the regulations, and they tell us the truth, guess what happens? They get punished. And the government officials who lie to us and tell us, oh no, we're not spying on you, and we'll do this and that, and it turns out, oh yeah, we did lie to you. But they believe in the noble lie, the government's allowed to lie to them. I would say they have something. People, the government should never lie to us. The government should be secret. The government should be there to protect our privacy. So that is what the founders want. That's why we have the Fourth Amendment. The government's role ought to be to protect our privacy. And yet right now, what do we have? We have a government that once they tell us the truth about how wars got started or why they're spying on us and all the things, guess what they do with those individuals? People like Edward Snowden, they want to put him in prison. I disagree with that. I think the government should be held accountable. They should not be secret, and the people's privacy should be protected.
Well, a couple questions for you. Since you retired from Congress now, what have you been up to?
Everybody say, see, you used the word too, but you used it properly. You said retired from Congress. A lot of people come up to me and say, oh, now that you're retired, how do you spend your time? What do you find to do? Well, in many sense, I'm retired from Congress, not in Congress, but I'm probably busy as ever, have more projects. You know that I'm very much aware of campaign for liberty, so I'm very much involved in continuing that process. Every once in a while, I like to participate in YAL conferences. But at another level, I've had several other new projects. One is the channel that I'm speaking from today, the channel.com, which is designed to try to get the information out. It's turn off your TV and turn on the truth. And we've had a lot of special guests on trying to get that message out. We spend a lot of time on talking about the illegal surveillance, the wars that are going on, and the violation of civil liberties. But also started something new because I've always been anxious to participate in education at all levels. So I've been involved in education. I own a free foundation, as well as I work with the Mises Institute. But I have an online homeschool program that Tom Woods and Gary North have been working with me on, and that's growing by leaps and bounds, and that can be found at curriculum.com. So there's a lot of activities going on. Another one that I'm excited about is being run by Dan McAdam. Policy research when I was in office, and he's followed up and referred to it now called Institute Peace and Prosperity, and that is strictly policy. He is very, very good. He's very helpful for doing a lot of research for me. So a couple of things I'm doing. That one thing I don't miss is getting on the airplane every Monday morning or Tuesday morning, flying up and putting on post office names and things like that. It was real work. Washington never occurred on the House floor. It was always behind the scenes, executive orders, conference reports, all kinds of things. But anything that was important probably has never been debated on the House floor. It's usually done somewhere else. Well, I don't miss that. I'm very happy that I'm still able to participate in the push this therapy.
Have you been writing much? Are you working on any new books coming up?
Well, yes. In fact, just turned that over to an editor over with me now, and hopefully that'll be out in a couple of months now after we do a little bit more work and making it as readable as possible. But it's an issue that I've spent a lot of time on. I'm very motivated on it, and that is the war issue. And the issues war, I don't have the final title on that, but the theme is, and it could be in the title, the theme is swords into plowshares. This whole idea of going to peace away from war. Of course, that idea has been around for a long time. It's been from a personal viewpoint about what I remember about World War II and how friends and neighbors went off to war and didn't come back as early as in the 40s. My teachers went off to war and the Korean War and didn't come back. How our neighbors had children go to Vietnam and then finally waking up and looking at all this, and none of it was necessary. So this is the student that I've written about, and hopefully within a couple months you'll hear an announcement that will give.
Great, exciting. So a little bit about Fed policy. We have a new chairman now, and I assume your opinions haven't changed much. Can you give us the latest and greatest on what's going on with the Fed and what your take on it is?
Well, Helen, it's the chairwoman. She's the chair, and she's been vice chair, chairman, vice. They're all chairman and vice, that's for sure. in the Fed. I don't know her, but she's a very decent person, as most people do or not. I think most people Washington do both completely wrong. I always give them a path. I always figure, why are they doing it? They're just studying the wrong economic policy. They've been brainwashed. And she's been brainwashed, so to speak, as all the members of the Fed have been, into believing this stuff. At the same time, those who really want to have the influence of Wall Streeters and the big bankers and the internationalists, they have another vote. But those individuals in Congress who have done it, it's actually in the case of economics that you should have it sorry. Now, the one thing different about Yellen compared to Bernanke, believe it or not, she's a much greater inflationist. She went along with all the QEs, and she kind of showed us continuing the process of tapering, unless it's necessary to do something else. But even the tapering is really cutting back out. It's cut back on purchase of long-term, instead of 85, they say it's down to 65, $80 a month. And they think this is a big good. But they say, oh, don't worry, interest rates will go up because we'll buy something else, buy short term. So it's all mischief. And this, to me, is one of the most important things economically. Prices are crucial. Mises said, if you don't have a pricing structure, socialism fails. That's why he predicted the Soviet system collapsed. He was actually right because they fixed the prices. But we fix the price of money. So everything that we do has a distortion to it. It's malinvestment. It's up. After the so-called corrections, let's admit it, we was down all that debt and go 8, 9, spent 5 years. Yellen really believes in this, and they will print and still people lose confidence in the dollar. I think that's what's happening. I'll get big strides to me. She gets past the first 4 years without a major crisis dealing with the dollar and price inflation. That is my conviction, and in many ways, I sort of hope I'm completely wrong, because the more time we have to get people to understand the danger of the Federal Reserve, the better it will be for them. But she will not slow things up. If anything, she usually was always more aggressive than Bernanke and others for inflating.
You've always predicted kind of a collapse in the economy, a collapse in the dollar. Do you see that happening in the short term, in the long term? Are there any market indicators we should be looking for that might prepare ourselves for such a thing? Yeah,
I think one market what China's doing, because they make the most money, they're the biggest creditor nation, and they backed off. There's been reports of them 2 or 3 months, but they backed off a whole lot of buying treasury debt. They have to be very, very cautious, because even though they do not buy, even if they sell a little bit, if they sell too much too fast, then there will be a panic out of it. If we get into a tangle with China, we sort of slap it away. We're owned by others because of our debt. And ancient said yes, so they really do. So if we get into a geopolitical conversation with China, they can destroy us rather quickly. They have $1.5 trillion reserves of dollars. I mean, just holding it. And they want to write it off. They don't want to now. Matter of fact, they are not nearly as aggressive as many people are playing them up to be about them being militarized and spreading near their borders and declaring, well, this is a no-fly zone, which we've done charming around the world anytime it be. So the first thing we do is go over there and fly through it to prove that. But they're not looking for a good investment. I mean, they turn things around. The Chinese are buying less. Fed still have a bit of control because these trades haven't gone up. But there's less purchases, and you see all interest rates creeping up. It will, no matter how much, eventually will be that the more the Fed buys, the higher the interest rates will go. The psychology will change. But good timing, Austrian economics teach, don't take the timing, because it could be next week, next year. The trends should be good, big trends. Benedict talked about the housing bubble in the 10 years before the housing bubble broke in 08 and 09. But those of us don't believe there's the research, so another bubble in bonds, another bubble in stocks, and in housing. The bubble in bonds is probably the biggest bubble, which means that the price is high when you buy a bond, and it's very, very low. The interest rate, that means the price is very, very high. The markets are usually more powerful governments, and those are to the time when they will lose control. For 20, 25 years, 55 up until 1971, they artificially fixed the price of gold at $35 an ounce. And the world knew it was worth a lot more. It's been putting all these dollars. That's why the predictions, the gold standard of that goods would break down. But nobody knew exactly what day that was. The Nixon made the announcement August 15, 1971. So we can't announce the day that's coming. There will be a precise time when everybody will know it. There'll be a rush to the exits, and things will happen. That's why you can't really say, well, we'll have plenty of time. I know we won't have plenty of time. The value of the universe is steadily around 180 years. Dollar 1913 now is worth 2 cents. But yes, that 2 cents now is still $1. The end state is so rather rapidly, but that's when it started. It's already in the early stages now, so keep your eyes on the bonds.
The latest trend in currencies has been Bitcoin. Have you followed Bitcoin at all? Do you have any opinion?
Yeah, it's very mysterious. I think you have to have a lot of faith in that. I've read a lot about it. The only good things I can say about it, it looks like it's come out of the marketplace. Looks like it could be a substitute. Could be something that people can use for exchange. And if there's no fraud committed, there should be no laws against it, and maybe it'll work. But there's something about it that just doesn't fit my mental status about what money is. Because when Hayek talked about competing currencies, he talked about commodities, basket of commodities, or using gold and silver and things like that. And I'm still the opinion that have a substitute. If you have a currency and know you can exchange, you should be able to exchange and get a gold coin or silver coin for it. That's a true metallic standard, but I don't know what we're going to see yet. I keep reading and reading. Even the experts say, well, I don't know exactly this. and the records are kept of everybody who has a Bitcoin. It's available. So if you want privacy, I don't think it provides the privacy. But in a way, I sort of hope it makes it. But right now, it doesn't look like it's doing well. You know, I think 1,200. That's lower than 600. That in itself doesn't mean a lot. But I like to be able to hold something of real value. As a person involved in freedom and economic policy and markets, I don't want the government to write laws against it unless there's a commitment, somebody's committing fraud. Other than that, do more area.
You mentioned Edward Snowden and the petition for clemency that you're running. Have you had a chance to, has he ever reached out to you? Have you ever talked to him before in the past or the present? And how do you think that's going to unfold, just this situation? Is he going to be stuck overseas? Do you think he'll ever have a chance to come back to the U.S.?
Well, right now, it doesn't look like he's going to, this is my opinion, that he'll risk his life coming back here. Because our officials said, come back and get a fair trial. Yeah. You know, the people that those intelligence committees, there's nothing that can be fair about it. And the whole thing is the people who disapprove what he did, they call him a traitor. People who have violated the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, and lied to their chief. Oh, they're okay. Snowden and others, Vanity and others, and Daniel Ellsberg, these individuals, they provide great service. Now, I've never talked to Snowden. I do know that he was a donor to the presidential campaign, which I found interesting. We've reached out. We have had record campaigns. We talked to his attorneys, and we interviewed. And Ben Greenwald's been on the program, on the channel. So this is all, we stay in touch, and now we have this petition. But I'm sure what he does has to be done cautiously. I don't know exactly what will happen because it's in July, his amnesty runs out. I can't believe that the Russians right now will throw people to the wolves and just put them out there, grab them up. Right now, the American government's indicating that even these guys on an airplane already, they put everything in hand because the money was on it, bring them into South America. I mean, that's the extent that they're going. So that I would think public pressure is still good. We get 500 names, it won't work. We have thousands of names. But we get many, many thousands of names that may affect what the president does. And this is very important. Public opinion can pressure on the members of Congress. Unfortunately, it's doing pretty well. This is much better than Daniel Ellsberg here in the early 1970s with the release of the Pentagon Papers. He went to trials and actually was exonerated all the way to the Supreme Court. And now he is not seen as a traitor, and seen as a heroic person. The whole American people that on is such a tragedy that American people don't remember those stories. American people have since went into wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, all based on lies. And it's pretty. But this is so important. A lot is at stake here. This is one. If anybody in the audience who is energetic, sign up on our petition. This for economy. Just think with the access to the internet, with everything paying out, it should be able to get tens of thousands of things. Because like sentiments from our side, majority of American people are with us on this issue. So that leads to we still covered.
Ukraine and Venezuela right now are kind of hot international topics with the uprisings in both of those countries. Have you been following it closely? And what is your opinion of what's going on?
Well, we made too much involved in my license to get out of there. But at the moment, I understand there's a total ceasefire of the country. The president that represents, I suppose, the whole country, but he's more or less for going with the Russians. And it's not Russians countries match together. It's not the East is Russian and the West is Ukraine, and they identify with European. You know, it's a natural place where maybe they can have a confederation and let the individual states, identify whomever they would like. But unfortunately, we're very much involved, been involved. Somebody called up a speech on YouTube speech that's been a committee just 10 years ago, where I was highly critical of our involvement in Ukraine. And at that time, they were cheating money. It's not cheaper now. And now the president run out, and I believe that our hands aren't clean on that. But the opposition, when I'm saying, they're adamant. They're not bad about it. They think what I'm saying is just possible law to defend non-intervention and to defend an independence and neutrality in this situation. And here we are on board of Russia, and there's a civil war going on, and we're picking and choosing to dictate. I don't think Russia should be in there. They should be out too. We need to have a confrontation with Russia that meets like there's a confrontation in Mexico, and Russia was down there putting in place that was anti-American. It would be pretty annoyed by that. We had a greater view of that problem. But all of a sudden, when we go 6, 7, 8,000 miles away from home, even once since 1953, just think that what was published of the leader and president of Iran in 1953, and it's Stalin Shah pushed suffered the consequences from that. So I'm a non-interventionist. That's what the founders of the times, the Constitution doesn't give us authority. Us being involved in Ukraine is another big problem. So I think we should step out of it and advise others, best of our ability, that we gotta let the Ukrainian people solve this problem.
We have a lot of students and new activists here today. What's your story? How did you come to these ideas, and what would you recommend for someone who comes up to you and asks, Dr. Paul, how do I learn about these ideas? What book should I read? What resources should I use?
Was that directed toward me?
Yeah, was it Jeremy?
Yes, was that?
Yeah, if a student came up to you and asked, I'm interested in your ideas, what book should I read? What resources should I go to understand the philosophy of liberty? What would you say to a brand new activist?
Well, there are so many. You want a real simple one to read that really talks about this moral principle. Read Modesty, Ask the Law. That's a fantastic little book. But there are so many. You go to Mises Institute, you have dozens and dozens of books on economic policies. In the back of my book, The Revolution, I list all those books that I consider very, very important. But that is key. That is getting the right information. So whether or not, the only place I can go back to is the Foundation for Economic Education. It was run by Leonard Reed, and I can find books here and there. I came across Hayek's and the Serfdom, which was very helpful. He got me introduced into policies, economic policy. But other people might like to read more policy. Again, some people have not personal liberties and law. But the lists are available in those two places. You can find just about anything you find. And Jeff, I think we're going to have to, if you have one more quick one, then I'll leave.
Yeah, I did. One more question. I keep getting asked this question, and I don't know if they're going to be excited about it, but people keep asking about a Ron Paul 2016 campaign. Is that in the
What do you want me to run for? Sheriff? I don't think it's going to be a national campaign for me, but I'm always campaigning. That's why I call it Campaign for Liberty. A lot of people say, so what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? But from the very first day I ran for office in 1974, which was a war, and I never expected much to come from it. The whole thing was is to promote the cause of liberty, campaign for liberty. So the techniques change, and the opportunities change. So right now, we talk about exactly what I'm doing. So the campaign is always there. The political campaign, it's not in my plans. I don't think I have time to do that, but I'm going to be checking up on all you young people, find out what you're going to be doing. But anyway,